You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. I feel like I might need to make a disclaimer at the top of this next segment because it has to do with teeth and fish and sex. Sex involving fish and their teeth, in fact. So, two remaining listeners that we have out there, please listen up. Teeth chew food and they belong in your mouth, right? Is that what you think? That is such a basic mammalian take. Earlier this year, researchers at the University of Washington published a paper about teeth on a fish's forehead. The study was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Researchers looked at the spotted ratfish, or ghost shark. It's one of the most common fish you're going to find in the Puget Sound. And yes, it has teeth in unexpected places. The study's author said that not only is this weird, but it also tells us something very interesting about evolution. Carly Cohen is a postdoctoral researcher at Friday Harbor Labs and lead author of this paper. Carly, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
I mean, to be honest, we're both basic mammals, so we just have to own up to that. I personally had never seen a spotted ratfish until getting ready for this segment and Googling the images. But hearing that they're one of the most common fish in the Puget Sound really surprised me because I had not heard of them or seen one before. Can you just describe to people what is a spotted ratfish? What do they look like? What role do they fulfill in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, totally fair. If you're not a diver or maybe on one of the NOAA boats pulling up our trawls and doing our fishing surveys, you might not have actually seen a ratfish in real life. They do live a little bit deeper than your traditional intertidal fishes that I think a lot of us are familiar with, or salmons. But the ratfish is this kind of eerie, silky, silvery looking fish. It has a long whip tail, which is part of why sometimes people call them ratfishes, in large glowing green eyes, and they float through the water like butterfly wings. That's how their fins kind of flutter. And right in the center of their forehead is this really bizarre toothy structure that we call the tenaculum.
I want to get to the tenaculum in just a second, but I'm really curious from the get-go how you got into studying ratfish, because this is not like the kind of creature that has social clout like a salmon or a halibut. This is a very funny little fish. I will say our editor, Jed Kim, said that the fish looks like it has soulful eyes like a dog. So he was kind of charmed by the ratfish. What piqued your interest in studying these creatures?
Yeah, I love that. My
Do
one of
you
my
agree?
advisors,
Soulful eyes?
I think so. They're definitely big and doughy. Uh, my master's advisor would call them that they have a face only a mother could love. That's what
Aw.
that's what she would call them. But the I got into them. So I'm from the East Coast originally, and I love my Atlantic Ocean diversity. And I moved out to Washington to start my PhD. And I had never seen the kind of diversity out here that I saw back east. It was insane. And I'm up here at Friday Harbor Labs, and we're trawling out on these vessels, and we're pulling up the net, and it's filled with its usual suspects of different types of flatfishes and crabs, a generator. And then mixed in all of this are the ratfishes. And they are such an adversary. I mean, they have spines and fins and pelvic regions, and they just get caught on the nets. And so it's a really, really difficult time to pull them out. And when you're playing with those fish all the time and you see them in trawling nets, you just have to start to wonder, what is all this anatomy and what are they doing with it?
What are all these fins and appendages and bizarre teeth in weird places? So let's talk about that tenaculum the ratfish has. I'm looking at a drawing right now. It's like a protrusion from its head, and the
Yeah.
teeth appear to line that protrusion. Like it has a little arm out of its forehead with teeth on it. What did your team discover about the teeth and why this animal has this arm out of its forehead?
Yeah, that's a great description of it. It's basically this club with hooked teeth. They kind of look like cat claws coming out of it. And so we've known for a little bit of time now that what they use it for is sex. The male ratfish have them, but females don't. And they use it to grab onto her pectoral fins in a loving embrace, a little bit unconventional. And so they use that to grab on so that their anatomy lines up and they're able to hold on to each other in these really fast currents that are the Puget Sound, and all the waters out here on the Pacific coast. But that's like such a weird structure to have evolved. And as the more we start to look at it and not just ask ourselves, how does this structure grow, but from where and from what, we realize something kind of unique. So ratfishes are also called naked sharks. And that's because they have this silky, silvery, smooth skin. Most sharks that we're commonly familiar with now, modern sharks that are alive today, feel like sandpaper. If you've ever touched their back, it's spiky. And those are denticles. And denticles are these kind of modified teeth. They don't quite count as teeth, and they resemble like these big armored plates that fishes and before vertebrates or jawed vertebrates even evolved had on their backs. And so we thought that this naked ratfish, which is a distant relative of sharks, might have had denticles just left on its forehead, and we were miscalling them naked. Our other hypothesis was that maybe it's something different. Maybe it's true teeth. And the more we began to look at it, we realized that they were true teeth. They had pulp cavities, they had nerves, they have this key tissue called the dental lamina. And all of this started to paint a picture of not just a fish with a club on its forehead with teeth, but basically another jaw outside of their jaw. And that's the first time we've seen anything like this in any other vertebrate species.
So does that tell you something about the way that sharks, modern sharks, and ratfish are related?
It tells us something more about the evolution of teeth. So long ago, ratfishes come from this lineage called the holocephalans. And that group was the most speciose group of sharks at one point in time. And most of them have gone extinct, but we're actually pretty familiar with them. The most famous cousin of a ratfish is Helicoprion, that big sharky thing with a rotating tooth whorl that's in the wrong orientation. Ray Troll does all these amazing cartoons of how paleontologists for 100 years thought this shark might have looked. And they're wacky. You should look them up. It's like a spiral on top of their forehead, a tongue like sticking out as if it's in some sort of horror movie.
I'm looking this up. I'm
Yeah,
doing
please.
a Google search. Oh, okay. So it looks like it has it's a shark, but with a buzz saw of teeth on its lower jaw.
That's exactly what it looked like.
Whoa. And that
So
lived? That was actually a thing? That's not a
that was the thing.
myth? Okay.
Right? Because it should be a myth. And the ways that paleontologists quite literally for a century thought that that buzzsaw was on the head was in all sorts of contortions. But ratfishes come from this lineage of crazy organisms that used to fill every niche and every possible environment. And what's left of that boom of diversity are the modern ratfishes and their tenaculum.
Wow.
So sharks are covered in teeth. The ocean floor is littered with those teeth. We can pull up ocean cores and we find these microfossils called ichthyoliths, and they are tiny little fish teeth and shark tentacles that paint us a picture of oceans past. It's pretty cool. Elizabeth Siebert over at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute is an expert in this. But we know a lot about sharks and their teeth and their diversity. And really, what this tenaculum does is question what the heck teeth can be, where we can find them, and what counts as a tooth versus a denticle. And it forced us to really try to make that distinction.
Do you know whether the teeth on the tenaculum actually migrated from the ratfish's mouth or whether it independently grew there? Like, is that
Yeah.
clear in the evolutionary record?
Well, so that was our question, right? So we have all these fishes we've been catching and sampling and looking at how they grow and develop. And our next question is how do you put this there? Some things that jaws have to make that dental lamina structure, those specific lines of cells, are really restricted into the mouth. You don't find them on the body. Denticles on the body never have them, that dental lamina structure. And so we had to go back into the fossil record to try to answer that. And this is where we use this fossil, Helidus simplex, which is a relative of the modern ratfish that we see. And they have a couple of key distinctions. So modern ratfish have a big beak where all of their teeth are fused together. But Helidus simplex has a bunch of little teeth, independent teeth that look like they're whirling on a conveyor belt, the way that maybe another shark species might. They also have a tenaculum, or something that looks like the modern day tenaculum, but rather than being far up on the forehead, possibly being used for sex, it's articulating with the lower jaw. And so what we think the tenaculum is it grabbed tissue. It used to be associated with feeding way long ago. And so it's retained those trademarks of oral jaws, including the dental lamina and oral epithelium and tooth-making capabilities. And then over time, it went on its own journey and selection takes over and evolution takes over. And what we're left with is this modern tenaculum used for sex, something that was once used for prey.
And it has some kind of advantage in order to be propagated. I assume that, that being able to grab on, at least not a disadvantage. I see.
At least not a disadvantage.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a good thing. So if you actually were to look up, if you were to hold a male ratfish to a female ratfish, his claspers don't quite reach her cloaca. But if the male ratfish uses that tenaculum to hold himself in place on her pectoral fin, now his claspers align perfectly with her cloaca. So we can see some sort of advantage happening there. But what's even cooler is that tenaculum doesn't look like the jaw of today's ratfish. It looks like the jaw of the ratfish of millions of years ago. And so it's kind of cool to think about how evolution and diversity preserves itself over millions and millions of years. This lineage that was so diverse and had all these teeth in all these places and experimented like some sort of art show is retained in just this small little nub on the head of one of the most abundant fishes here in the Pacific Northwest.
Carly Cohen is a postdoctoral researcher at Friday Harbor Labs and lead author on a paper about spotted ratfish teeth. So, Carly, this being the first time that true teeth have been found outside of the mouth in this way, where are you turning your attention to next? Where might you find teeth in an unexpected place?
I think everywhere. My hope is everywhere. No, I mean, I think that what this really taught us is our understanding of teeth can limit our perceptions of diversity, of what we're seeing around us and calling denticles and armor. Another fish I study out here is the Pacific spiny lumpsucker, which is like a little tiny soccer ball. It's terrible at swimming, and it's covered in armor. And what I have found is that armor is teeth. And so I think the more we look at organisms, the more we're going to find teeth doing things that aren't for prey and occupying all these other avenues of diversity.
I think I need everybody in the audience right now to drop what they're doing, if you can do so safely, and Google Pacific spiny lumpsucker, because it is the most adorable thing I have ever seen. Oh my gosh.
Spectacular.
They are like little round golden, just like dinosaur looking faces, but with like beautiful fins. And those are teeth all over? Like spiny?
Those are teeth all over.
Wow.
And they have so many secrets. They suction onto things. They're surviving the intertidal, essentially looking like little dimpled golf balls. And they fluoresce. The males are bright red.
That's why they're so bright.
Their bellies. They're a beautiful organism.
Oh my gosh.
And they're covered in teeth too.
Your life and your work is so different from mine, and I'm just so appreciative that you could give us a little window into this, into the incredible creatures that you study from the Puget Sound. Carly, this has been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. By the way, this show is only possible because listeners support us. If you are able to give right now, check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.